Hey, Gary's Gulch, welcome back. I'm going to replay for you for this episode while I'm on travel an interview I did with another gentleman he's actually a graduate of West Point and much younger than me. He's good 25, 30 years later graduating from the academy than I am. That's a humbling thing to say. And he did a short tour in the military, and now he is also in the infinite banking space. He was asking for my advice, asking for how I built my career over the years, and specifically, we got connected by my awesome friend Aaron Chapman. So this is somewhat of a continuation on from the episode I did directly there with Aaron, not on the same topic, but really I got introduced to this gentleman while I was there with Aaron in Missouri. After that, I went out to Salt Lake City and did a client live stream video, the first one not done by Patrick Donahoe himself. So it was an honor to be able to say we did that first. Jaden Zubal, my business partner, and myself did that. It went very well, I thought. It was fun and it was exciting and it was cool to be able to say we accomplished that. I'm going to actually play a portion of that in the next episode here, and then I'll be back live with you the episode following that. I'll be out of the country for 2 weeks, and our son will be at home holding down the fort and the operations here locally. And hopefully it'll be an incredible event. And that's been a long time since my wife and I have gotten away this far and for this long. So very much looking forward to that. I've gotten some feedback and some questions about my impression of the war. I think it's consistent with what you would expect given my support for President Trump. I had a friend here recently say that President Trump was the most effective world leader in the last 100 years. I'd push it beyond that because 100 years doesn't eclipse the Franklin Delano Roosevelt era, and he is definitely a better president than FDR was. FDR was a crazy liberal who was essentially a socialist, very rough on our country. He duped people into the way in which we got into World War II. Should we have been in there? Yeah, I would have been someone who did not think that our isolationist ideas of the time were a good idea, and they were not going to last. We were going to get in eventually, that he was just not a good person. Sorry for those of you who read the history books and think that FDR was, or for some other reason think that FDR was. He was not. So I would take at least as far back as Abraham Lincoln. That's pushing 150 years. And I think in the end, when the books are all finally written, I think we'll be able to look back on this and say that he not only was better than Abraham Lincoln, more effective than Abraham Lincoln, potentially more than George Washington. This man is liberating more than just a country, which George Washington did amazingly. He's doing more than just holding a country together and getting rid of slavery in the New World that Abraham Lincoln did. He's liberating other peoples and countries, major countries around the world, and he's doing it with an America First focus and helping to ensure that we prosper here in America for decades and decades to come. Amazing, incredible guy. So the question that I got last night set me back just a little bit. It was a father of a young man who is in the Marines and is on the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Persian Gulf. And he and his wife were both very concerned. They were stressed out about the reports that came out originally from Iran, where they were doing their typical bravado and faking it when they can't actually cause any military harm. They were saying that they had a hypersonic missile that had hit the Abraham Lincoln. I'm sure you remember that. And all of it was made up. They shot the missile. It was steered the entire time by electronic warfare from the U.S. assets, and it splashed down in the Persian Gulf. Those ships have not been threatened. And I pray that this thing being recorded 8 days before it goes live, that is still true when you hear this, but we are taking out the assets that pose true threat to the Persian Gulf, all ships that sail in the Persian Gulf and the region around, doing incredible things. But anyway, so this family, I tried to reassure them that that threat is just not that reasonable. Can it happen? Can they sucker punch when our guard is down? Yes. I pray that doesn't happen in an active wartime environment, that we don't let our guard down. But it would require us to let our guard down to make a human mistake or an intentional mismove on a human side for that kind of thing to actually happen. There's a lot of defense in backup systems and aircraft that are covering the onboard systems to make sure that they have these blind corridors that they fly our weapons through and they don't let the others come back through. So I tried to reassure them. But then it became obvious to me that he was blaming President Trump for his son being at risk. He said, this guy gets us into all kinds of messes that we can't get back out of. So there was also some preconceived different political opinions than I have. And I didn't know that really going into it. But again, I tried to just reassure them of the amount of protection that those vessels have in that environment. But I won't sugarcoat it, neither did President Trump. We have lost people from drone attacks. 6 members of the Army were lost, God rest their souls, from a drone attack to a base they were at on land. And no one in the Navy, as far as I know, or the Air Force have been killed in actual combat. And so protected, but people do die. We're doing dangerous things. They're doing it on little sleep in a very high stress environment. So things do happen. Even training accidents happen in wartime environments like that. But my big takeaway, and what I finally decided I was not able to share with him in his emotional state, was that it was not President Trump that put his son at risk. It was his son deciding to join the military and lay his life down on the line if necessary to protect this amazing country. I think his son is in a completely different mindset than the parents are. And so they raised a patriotic young man, a man who wants to do the right thing, a man who was inspired by the military and wanted to turn into a bigger, better version of himself. That's what placed his son on the USS Abraham Lincoln. It's what placed his son in harm's way right now. And I believe, and I think his son believes, that it is a beautiful, amazing demonstration of what an American warrior is all about. Godspeed to this young man. I've never met him. I don't know his last name. But what I would say to the parents, if you're hurting, I understand. My boys may one day go to war. One of my sons wants to be a firefighter. And we can say that very few members of the military ever actually get hurt, or a firefighter or a police officer. But it's just not accurate. And even if it is accurate that very few do, every time they put on that uniform, they could be that person. I think that many people, because it has become so safe in the military, and one of the things I worry about us being successful with this electronic warfare and fighting wars from the sky only, is that we forget that people do die in these things, our side and the other side. And we shouldn't take it lightly and say, yes, we can go to war in a future administration. I'm definitely not talking about President Trump. I am 100% a believer that he knows absolutely the risks that he's taking. He is not trying to do regime changes and take over other countries. He's trying to free people on this planet. I don't think there's a chance that he's going to take this lightly and say, we're not going to lose anybody. It's just money. Let's just go do it. I don't think he will, but I think in the future somebody might. And equally bad is that members who join the military to get a college education or to get a paycheck because their buddy did it and didn't have to go to war, then they join with the idea that I didn't sign up for this putting my life at risk or being in any danger thing. That would be unfortunate, and hopefully we don't go down that path, because we did have a very woke and a very passive military in the recent past, and it made us weak, and it made people do crazy things like Russia invade Ukraine, and we don't want to go back there. China develop a footprint in Central and South America. We are now taking back over the region, and we're going to have a strong, free region without all of the cartels and without the influence of socialism and communism getting into our region. We have to be able to sustain that with people who know that they're putting their lives at risk. They're not just getting a college grant, an education, and a free paycheck and a pension one day in the future. This stuff is risky that we go do. And I know that young man knows that. Everyone on that ship knows that. And I hope that their parents can stay behind this effort and just pray for their children, know that they are being amazing patriots, doing incredible things for this country, and hug them a little bit harder the next time that you see them. And they will come home safely with our prayers, our support, and our belief in what our country is doing. This is not a protracted Afghanistan or Iraq. President Trump is going to help free these people. He's going to protect Americans because he's going to take out Iran's ability, has already taken out Iran's ability to affect our livelihoods and the livelihoods of those that we protect in the region. Thank you so much, and I hope you do enjoy this replay of an interview I recently did with my new good friend, Austin, who's joined the infinite banking alternative investing advisor world. And perhaps we'll come back with a follow-up episode when we get back together and dig a little bit deeper into how I represent and help my clients in this industry. Thanks so much, and enjoy my interview here with Austin.
And then if memory serves me right, you were the one that introduced Aaron to IBC. Is that right?
Yes, he was a client of mine. That was the first time he'd ever heard of it.
So tell me how you got entered, and then how do you pair that with your own strategy too? What's your core strategy with how you apply IBC?
So how did I get into IBC?
Yeah, like because it's like an alt thing, right? It's like on the fringes, like it's not super popular, what I found personally talking to people.
Yeah,
So I always
yeah,
find a lot of interest in knowing how people get into the space as a whole. I think it's very interesting.
yeah. I'd never heard of it either. I was so 2011. I had finished up command of my submarine. I had time to be able to look at my finances, realized I'd lost half of it, the markets. And it was just this incredible, stark opposite experience I had during the same period of time on my submarine. On the
Mhm.
submarine, I'm in charge of everything. I get all, and I can make decisions with knowledge behind it, meaning that the risk was lower because very educated, high performing people on my submarine would show up and say, here's the issue, here are the options we have, here are the risks associated with it. I recommend this decision, and then I would choose one and we'd move forward.
Yeah,
Very successful submarine tour, turned around a submarine that was in big time trouble. We had a great experience. It was incredibly rewarding.
cool.
But it was all about having control and spending a lot of personal devoted time on it as if I was starting out my own new business or something. And I could tell you exactly why things went right and why things went wrong because I was involved in them happening. Then at the same time, during the same period of time, I had started command right before I started command, and I closed the book and closed the closet, which was my personal finances.
Mhm.
I had taken a negative $2,000 net worth in 1987 when I went to the Naval Academy because I had to get a loan just to buy the friggin' uniforms.
Yeah,
I took that to over $1 million
no way.
at the beginning of 2009 when I was getting ready to go into command. And I'll take credit for it, but in reality, I just saved like a monster. My wife and I were saving 50% plus of our income because I was homeless and dirt poor going into the military. I was
Mhm.
chasing a safe, secure W-2 job and a pension and all that stuff because I didn't want to be poor again, didn't want my kids to be poor. I was saving like a monster, and in the 90s, and obviously we got paid very well. I got bonuses, all that stuff got thrown in to saving and investing, and the markets went straight up in the 90s. So
Mhm.
I probably took credit for that with an ego as I was leading into 2009. But what I was starting to realize was that I had this polar opposite thing going on. My father had no money, was completely bankrupt when he died my freshman year at the academy because he didn't understand variable interest rate loans and the high interest rate shit that was going on with Jimmy Carter and all that stuff. And so we lost our farm, living for free in a rundown trailer on my uncle's land. Dad's health is failing because of all the stress. He ends up dying. But uh, so what I was chasing for 20 years as an adult was I don't want my kids to show up in hand-me-down clothes and all the material things. But
Mhm.
I was spending so much time doing that, I was spending no time around them, and my kids were acting out and doing stuff that I wasn't doing. And when I was a kid, and I realized that my father had left the important stuff inside me by just spending time around me, with the legacy being what you leave inside a person to make them successful, as opposed to what I used to think legacy meant, which was really inheritance, which is what you leave to them. And an
Yeah,
inheritance is like gasoline. It can be used for an incredible experience to save people's lives. It can be used to sell in times of crisis to get something that you need, trade and barter. But it can also be used, which most entitled kids whose parents are focusing on business and not them, it can be used as gasoline to burn shit down or put up their
absolutely.
nose. And so inheritance, it's just a resource. So I was realizing that I wasn't putting any legacy inside them, and I was giving them the gasoline to burn shit down with. So
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, I don't care how this command tour goes once I start it. I'm going to quit when I'm done with it. Of course, it goes perfect. And then I have all these senior officers in the Navy chasing me down, guilting me into trying to stick around and be an admiral. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm leaving because I now
Cool.
had an extra incentive, which was figure out what the fuck personal finance means.
Yeah.
because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I poured myself into how have people throughout world history gained wealth and held on to wealth. And so I realized it was direct control, which I learned at the same time in the military. Like I controlled my destiny and it went well because I educated myself, I got experience. And this whole passive let somebody else handle it is a bunch of bullshit. So I
Yeah.
took all my money out of the markets and I put it down into real estate. And as I was getting ready to do this, I was listening to the real estate guys. I went to Robert Kiyosaki conferences. I did everything I could to learn.
Cool.
And advertising on real estate guys was Patrick Donahoe at Paradigm Life. And he was talking about how you can make your money do two things at once. That's a perfect thing to borrow against and leverage for your purchasing your real estate. And so they called me because I guess I reached out on their website and I looked at the math. I was a really tough cookie at the beginning, like many of my engineering clients
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And the math spoke and it made sense. And so I
Yep.
specifically got into this world because I wanted to help other people learn how to do infinite banking because of the impact it had for me.
Yep.
I didn't want to be a financial advisor. I actually
Mhm.
hated because of my experience, the putting the money in the markets. But today I'm licensed to do that primarily because I have had 10 years of horrible experience of my clients having a guy who's doing their markets and me. And every time
Mhm.
they get on the phone with one of us, they're trashing the other guy because they're like, don't put your money in life. That whole buy term and invest the difference is because if you put your money in this life insurance thing, I have $4 million in life insurance right now.
Yeah.
If I had a market guy, he'd be pissed at me because that's
Absolutely.
$4 million he's not getting 2% a year on. Our interests are just not aligned. So
Yeah.
we will help manage just to protect our clients from that crap. How do I personally use it? Early on, I was just borrowing against the policies to put them into as the down payment on real estate. I would borrow
Cool.
as much OPM as I could, lock in long-term fixed rate debt
Yep.
because that's protection. And then I would borrow against the policies to do the down payments. Why? Back then, I would say it improves tax. I can take more tax deductions. True. I can
Mhm.
use it as equity stripping so that I have less of my own money in there if I record a lien or something. Totally true. All those things are true. But the true answer is all my money's in the policies. Why did I borrow against policy? Because that's the only place I have money.
Yeah.
So lots of long answers there, but I now full spectrum can understand, and I teach clients that it's about far more than just a cool way to borrow, use your cash. Yes, your money's earning in two places at once. That's awesome. Yes, you can get
Mhm.
better tax deductions. But the important thing is that you're insuring the number one asset with guaranteed returns that can't be taken away from you and they can't raise premiums. I think that's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
Control and
It's
leverage
now
in the
cool
system.
again to have life insurance.
Absolutely. I love it, man. Lots of overlaps with our story. When you got into real estate and your core strategy now, are you doing mostly turnkeys? What was your core
Mm.
methodology inside there?
I started off completely doing turnkey, and that's totally a fine way to do things. I've done both Class C remodel stuff. I've
Mhm.
dipped my toe into Class D. We'll never go there again. Life's too short. I did new construction turnkey for a bit, and I would keep doing that if I were still doing turnkey. And I may go back next year. I don't close the door really on anything. Like the world of real estate is you just shifting as the market has you shift.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Be
and
flexible. Yeah.
and you'll see the same thing with Ali and all other kinds of people. They'll be representing new construction only because that's what people want. And there's no premium for getting the remodel stuff done or the rehabs. There'll be a period of time here in a couple of years where rehabs are really at a discount and people doing that again. I won't go back to the Class C, D stuff. I might go to Class C, Class B minus if it's an apartment building, but I'm not going back there with single family again.
Okay.
I have, in the most recent couple of chapters, I went into tier three investments, syndications, lost my
Mhm.
freaking shirt up there. So I
Really? Okay.
touched the third rail, as they say in the markets. I'm not going there. I touched the
Mhm.
third rail up in the syndications because I bought into mailbox money and let the professionals handle it and get great
Mhm.
tax deductions. I've lost my shirt in almost 10 different industries, almost all at once. It's been a rough 5, 6 years. I held the real estate during that period of time. I've now come back down to what we call tier two direct investing, back to
Mhm.
my roots that I learned in 2011 and got cocky and forgot. So I've built my own properties in Cape Coral where I live. I like doing that because I'm also a real estate professional. I started that last year when my wife went back to full-time nursing because she enjoys doing that. So she was a real estate professional, kicking and screaming. She hated doing it, but I kept the logs for her, kept the books, and made sure that we met the requirements so that we could offset my high W-2 and 1099 income from my insurance business with her losses in the real estate world. But she wanted to go back to work. So now I'm a real estate professional And so having these local properties, I have 7 local properties and doing short-term rentals. So I'm there all the time, mowing the lawns, doing all that kind of stuff, just because it's my exercise and because I'm
Mhm.
logging hours.
Cool.
Um,
Love it. Get that
our next
active
step is
appreciation.
probably going to be going into just scaling up, just using the monopoly game of turn greenhouses into red hotels. I'm not
Yep.
going hotels, but find a 15 or 18 unit B class, not sexy apartment building and take that over, something like that. I
Very
like,
cool.
I'm passively in mobile home parks and self storage and car washes. Those are kind of fads. The multifamily's not, and the mobile
Mhm.
home parks are not. But they're so popular right now that it's hard to make them work. Like I'd love to own a mobile home park in Florida, but the multiples are horrible.
I want to spend some time in here. I feel like this is the most important space. And really, what drew me to Allie and Aaron and now you is the wealth with purpose niche.
The what?
The wealth with purpose niche.
Oh,
Like, I want to talk more on like your family strategy and everything. It seems like your why, learning your story, come back from a rough upbringing, really want to take care of your kids, really want to build this Rockefeller system through control rather than rate of return, and really want to hear more on like your vision for that. What is responsible for driving that? Is it just like taking care of your family, or is there something higher? I always like picking around in here.
yeah. It's funny you asked this question. I guess I am recording this. It's evolving, right? Like we learn about ourselves throughout our entire lives. I joined the military to get a W-2 income, safe,
Mhm.
secure money. I hate being poor. I hated being poor. And in my immature male brain, that was the most important thing, chase material condition. I started to learn about legacy and what you can leave inside other people and inspiring people. I stayed in the military after maybe year 5 or 6. I vividly remember having a conversation with my wife about signing up for the second round. And she was like, listen, in the end, if you enjoy what you're doing and you feel like you're making a difference, sign up, continue on. But don't tell yourself you're doing it for me and Jake. We only had one child at the time because
Mhm.
we don't enjoy this lifestyle. This
Mhm.
is a sacrifice for us, and we'll do it. And so I had to do a lot of self-searching. And what I recognized is that I really am a very patriotic guy, and I loved defending the American way of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness from threats.
Yeah,
And I was getting paid well. And so I felt proud about what I was doing. And I did want to command a submarine. But once I got to the end of that, like I achieved commanding a submarine, I didn't have the same feeling about being an admiral or being a commodore, even because I started to realize that the threat is not from the outside. Like Trump has proven over and over again that we don't have an equal out there. And I
Mhm.
am very proud of our people who serve in the military. They serve a very unique purpose. But then America and our way of life did not need me to be an admiral. What we needed was we needed to strengthen the family unit. And so I felt called to work with business owners and people who were interested in real estate and people who were interested in agency. My favorite book is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And there's a place in there called Galt's Gulch. John Galt, main character, mysterious character for the first 300 pages of the book. But in the end, there's this secret place in the mountains that he brings people who are interested in controlling their own destiny, no entitlements, never quit working, like all these people that were me. And so my podcast is called Gary's Gulch for that reason. If you go back to the very early episodes of it, you'll hear a lot of stuff about what drives me. But even that's evolved. So now I'm working with primarily business owners because I realized that a business, okay, let me answer this much shorter. My faith in God is much stronger than it was even just 2 or 3 years ago. I grew up a Catholic. I went to Catholic school. I did all that stuff. I rejected it. Now I'm so much stronger in that. And I do everything for the glory of God. And I realized the power of operating in that way. My son, not as strong in faith, but I said, dude, if you just think this way, if you just believe this way, you don't even have to believe it. If you just act this way, it will improve your life tremendously because you take ownership for all the things in your life. You're not taking ownership or credit for all of the good things that happen in your life. You're very humble. So it's improved my life. But what I realize is that we all have unique talents. We're on this planet for a purpose. It's why we narrowly evaded an accident or bankruptcy or whatever has happened that almost got us and it didn't. It's because God's got more for us to do. And so, if we are talented to do things that other people aren't in a unique way, if you could build a business around that, you can share your talents from God that He wants you to share at scale, right? Elon Musk is incredible at the things he's doing, but if he did that one on one or just for himself, think about how worse off the world would be today. So,
absolutely.
so I'm inspired to take people who are interested in controlling their own destiny or they wouldn't own a business and helping them thrive and do that at a better rate. So I want to help business owners understand personal finance, understand scaling and selling and exiting businesses. I'm now certified in that. And the whole reason I'm doing all this stuff is because it is my premise that if you go back to 250 years ago, it's a great time to celebrate and think about this. 250 years ago, these guys risked their lives to take on the most powerful ruler in the world because they believed in a concept of let people protect people with the judicial system, rule of law. But if you do that and you allow them to enjoy the fruits of their own labor, it will explode in a positive experience. And it has, right? Everywhere it's been tested on the planet, but we were the first. The threat is not even reasonable from the outside because this concept is so strong. It is
Yeah.
happening and coming at us all the time from the inside. The threat's on the inside, not the outside. So I left the military. I started doing this. I couldn't even explain why I was doing it, but now I
Yeah.
can. I want to strengthen the family unit because back 250 years ago, when our founding fathers were doing this, if George Washington had stood up in his first term and said, I need you guys to give me a tax, which is a portion of all of your labor, and I'm going to start telling you what you can and cannot do. They would have
Mhm.
immediately killed his ass, right? Because
Yeah. Two to
he
three
understood
percent
he
tax
worked
started the
for the people.
revolution.
What
Yeah.
was that?
I said 2 to 3% tax started the Revolutionary War, and now we're being
Right?
taxed like 50%. Yeah.
So it's because we understood what was important. The
Mhm.
people, the government works for the people,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That's
And so my entire goal is to make people financially educated enough with enough resources and inspired enough that someday the government's going to say, we're going to increase your taxes. We're going to take this away. We're going to make you do this, put on masks and don't open the doors of your business. And the people are going to be able to say, good luck. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that short interview from Austin, a fellow member of the infinite banking world and a fellow patriot recently having completed service in the U.S. Army. It was my intention that would help you better understand why I do what I do. I know I've put pieces of it here and there, and I think just going over it again from a different angle over time will help you determine if you're like-minded and this is a good path and a good podcast to stick with. And following up on what I talked about at the beginning of the episode, please stay strong with our amazing president and this America First agenda, taking out the terrorists and the psychopaths who are in charge of Iran for 47 years chanting death to America is an America First agenda. I couldn't be more excited about having Senator Markwayne Mullin in charge of DHS and continuing the efforts we've done to lock down the border and to remove people who have broken into our country, especially those that are violent criminals and stealing from our nation. Until next time, go make something amazing happen in Gary's Gulch and make America great again, my friends. I will talk to you soon.